This
Anna.
conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to thank Anna and our friends at the Hopewell Township branch of the Mercer County Library. The Hopewell Township branch library has had a long relationship with the Hopewell Valley Historical Society. For several years, they have generously provided HVHS with a room in the library that we can use as our archive, and we thank them for that. Thank you to our audience for your interest in our program tonight. HVHS and the Hopewell Museum are proud to put together quality programs that interest our patrons, whom I'm happy to report are not just local to Hopewell Valley. We are grateful to be able to collaborate with organizations like the Hopewell Township Branch Library. When I was very young, my grandmother lived with my family. She told me wonderful stories about her life. One thing that she often shared was how she used to take the trolley from Pennington to visit her family in Trenton. She often made me feel like I was part of her story, and I wish that I could experience what she had experienced. I always wanted to be able to see what those trolleys were like. Since that time, I've been a sucker for a good story. Almost 2.5 years ago, I noticed a post on Facebook, one of their yard sale groups, advertising a train car that was discovered by a couple of house flippers as they were demolishing a house in Hamilton. They were looking for recommendations on a company or museum that would be interested in the train car. That car would eventually be identified as Trenton Transit Company number 288, and I'm very happy to report that Liberty Historic Railway, which is an organization that is dedicated to funding New Jersey transportation-related preservation projects, answered that call and arranged to pick up the trolley. They formed a plan and arranged for temporary storage for that trolley. Tonight, J.R. May, Vice Chairman and Director of the LHR, will tell you that story. Mr. May has a long-standing commitment to the history of railway and trolley transportation. He has volunteered for the New Jersey Museum of Transportation in various capacities since 1972, working on a range of acquisitions, restoration projects, and hands-on operating and maintenance activities, and serving as chairman of the board of NJMT from 2000 to 2004. Since that time, he has worked personally on the acquisition and restoration of several steam locomotives and a caboose, most recently with Liberty Historic Railway. He is currently working as the project manager for number 288 in their effort to restore the trolley car to its original state. Mr. May is president of Melvin M. May Associates Incorporated of Manasquan, New Jersey, and serves on several professional organization boards. He lives in Wall Township, New Jersey with his wife, Patty. And without further ado, I welcome Mr. May.
Thank you, Bob. Hope everybody can see me okay. Always a little odd to do these things when you can't actually see the people. I really prefer a live audience. Hopefully there'll be some questions provided through the chat function, and we can have a little dialogue as we go. So without further ado, I'll get going. If I'm going too fast, please someone say something. If it's too slow, definitely say something. Probably just one quick correction on my bio with New Jersey Museum of Transportation. I left there in July of 2004, but was active, for the most part from 72 to 2004. It was after I left that I started to do more independent things with other people on a fairly loose basis, which has been a lot of fun and very enjoyable. So just to move on, a couple of talking points or caveats up front. I'm not a historian. I'm not going to give you the full deep history of the car or where it ran. I'm more of a hands-on kind of guy. I will provide a little background on who Liberty Historic is. Surprisingly, or maybe not, I've done this before. Myself and the people that were part of this have done this before. I'll go into a little detail on that because there were some important lessons learned there. And then we'll get into the 288, how it came up, how we found it, how we moved it, and where it's going, hopefully in the future. Who is Liberty? Something started up primarily by Bill McKelvey. He has a small board which funds quite a few projects within the state of New Jersey. It's not just railroad equipment. It can be ships, it can be buildings, buses, as long as it's related to New Jersey transportation history. little background here is provided. I won't read it to you. I'm sure these slides can be made available, or I can send them to you if you like. Gives you all the information as well as the website. And on the next page here, there is a process to request funding. If you have a project or an organization that is considering or working on a New Jersey transportation heritage related project, send us a note, initially, or send us a request, whatever you'd like to do. Again, we do fund a lot of projects around the state. Sounds like somebody got muted there. Just a couple of samples of things that have been funded by Liberty. The car down here, I think you can see my my arrow here circled. A lot of money went into this car. This is up at Whippany Railway Museum. This is over at InfoAge here in Wall Township, the Jeep with the railroad wheels on it. Buses, there were pictures of ships I could have put in. I mean, there's all kinds of things I could have added. So again, keep it in mind if you have an organization or a project that's in need of funds. So kind of getting more into the project here, kind of a famous quote, deja vu all over again. Going back to my days with New Jersey Museum of Transportation in Pine Creek, the board at the time was notified by a guy down in Seaside, New Jersey, that he had a railroad car that he wanted to donate. And this didn't go real well. And if anything, was a good learning experience. Again, this picture will look familiar later on, but very similar situation. A fishing club had brought several Pennsylvania Railroad wooden passenger cars that had been long retired down to the beach in Seaside and set it up as a fishing club. And over the years, additions were built, roofs were put on, heat was put in, and they became year-round residences. So we started the process to uncover the car, prepare it to be moved. And this is what we found after we got all the stripping done of the building around it. And there was one major problem with this car. The wood wasn't in bad shape, but from the salt air, there was no metal holding it together. The big iron rods that would have held it together vertically, you just broke them off in your fingers. Very little steel holding it together. We were looking at a very expensive process to build a steel skeleton to put inside it, and going through the doors from one end to the other. And but in the process, there was time constraints. The summer was coming, wanted it out before the summer hit. There was issues getting across the bridges because of weight. And then the owner started to strip out the good stuff. Door jambs, which had the gold leaf on them, the stained glass windows that were still in it, things like that. And in the end, we just couldn't, with the amount of money and time it was going to take to do it, moving it was not possible. This is what the car would have looked like as built, and this is what it ended up. Rather discouraging, for sure. Lesson learned. But what you do see here is a lot of good wood in this thing. And even on the underside here, the original brake cylinders. But again, not much steel holding that wood together. So again, lessons learned that a group of us, I think, have carried forward. Not just myself, there were a lot of others involved. You can't rush these things. You have to have the time to do it right. We should have had more of a formal agreement in place beforehand, so that parts of the car would not have been removed and we would have had more time to do the work. There would have been some risk if we had taken ownership, but what we found was even when you tore it apart, there was a lot of good wood. What you find is that timber is very expensive to buy for the restoration of a passenger car or even an old house. A friend of mine had used the term archaeological demolition, where you carefully take it apart, you document it, you photograph it, drawings, all that, and then save what you can. So then probably it was just 4 years ago that kind of a group of us that are the same group that was sort of involved with the trolley car, stumbled again with Facebook and barn finds and eBay, a caboose that was abandoned in someone's backyard. Long story that I won't bore you with here. But it was essentially a time capsule. It was retired in the 60s. Somebody bought it, put it in their backyard, and never touched it. So it was very complete, except for the wood, minor detail. But again, we kind of used the lessons learned from the Seaside car, and we took it apart and made essentially a kit out of it. And that's the picture on the left that you'll see in this photo. On the right is where we are today. It's probably 60% done, maybe 75. We're working on the cupola and the siding now. But again, would not have been possible without doing the very careful demolition that we did as a group. We did have drawings which helped, but we had the kit, all the bolts, all the blocks, you name it, we had it. So again, that same mentality was brought to the Trenton number 288. How can you at least save it? So just real quick on the background. And if anybody has any questions or anything, let me know. If I'm going too fast, just shoot me a note or something. As most of you probably know, it was purchased by the Trenton Mercer County Traction Company. As far as we know, at least here in New Jersey, it's the only one that survives. I think there's a couple of Trenton cars that might be in Ohio. I don't have the details on that offhand. The number 288 was a 1914 product of the Brill Company, and we have the order number. So, I mean, just real quick, I just wanted to check my notes here, so I don't forget anything. Some of these photos and whatnot, Eric Strohmeyer had found this one and some of the others. Some of them came from the Historical Society of Pennsylvania and the R.C. Maxwell collection at Duke University. I don't have it in the chart, so I at least wanted to to mention that. So again, the company had put out in 1914 an announcement that they were buying these cars. I would assume it's $55,000 each, but I couldn't be sure about that. The picture you see here is not exactly what they look like. What you see here, I think, is an 11-window car. The Trenton car is a 12-window car, but with the end windows, this window here and this window here, being about 2/3 the size of all the rest of the windows. They did that just to make the future restoration that much more difficult. So there was another point here I wanted to make, but I can't find it all. And they're a little bit longer than the current cars that they had, and again, $55,000. The picture of the order book that Eric had found down at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. And when you open it up, by golly, there's the order. And what's interesting is that it's broken out into, the same number is broken out into 3 pieces. You're going to hear a phone ringing in the background, that figured. I don't know, hopefully it won't go to a voicemail, it never ends. So you see the order number here, and the 31-foot 4-inch body, which is the main body, not including the entry areas on each end. Had a steel frame, and then the 39E trucks, which we do not have and are very, very rare. I don't know if this 341 is part of this. It says electric work, and it seems to be under the Trenton Mercer County area here, so that might be a piece as well. And you can see the receive date that and then the delivery, 7/31. This is a builder's photo of a sister car. They ordered several. We have no good pictures of the 288 in service. We have lots of pictures of 298 and others, but not the 288. Again, you can see the smaller windows, which also match up into the clear story windows, which I thought was kind of a neat detail. You'll see the 4-section doors. This was this was for I guess what they call the 2-man operation of the car. It would later be rebuilt into a one-man operation, so it would go from 4-panel doors to 3 panels. We have one of the 3-panel doors. So again, there's your builder's photo, and it's documented down here by the construction number and everything as well. The picture of the steel frame, and again, it's of our car, or one of the sister cars, but it's the same order. You can see how the frame of the trolley car is built, which is a little different than what I'm used to, where you have this steel section that goes vertical. On our car, a little piece of this has been cut out for a side entry door, and was a little bit of a concern when we first picked up the car, but it was not something to worry about at all. The car was as solid as can be when we picked it up. We have the steel for both ends, but not the curved steel piece here. The interior of the car when it was built, we have a lot of the original windows. We have a lot of the original shades of all things. Most of this window hardware we have, fairly complete. Again, kind of that kit mentality that I talked about, when I talked about the caboose previously. Between 25, 26, 27, the cars were rebuilt and became one-man cars. The big difference, of course, was the doors and this equipment put in the treadle-operated rear doors, which were added. So it gives you a little idea on where they ran as well. A couple of pictures of these cars in service. Looks like this is the 34. This would be a 3-panel door. This would be, if you're looking at the car, this would be kind of the door that we have now currently. On the 288, all this is missing up front. I'll show you pictures of what's missing. Another shot of it in service. I think Eric had something he wanted me to mention here, but I don't have it here in front of me. I apologize for that. But just a couple shots of it in service. I guess they were advertising Buick at the time. Some of these pictures were very helpful as we're trying to recreate the front of the car. So then we get on to the car itself. These photos will look a little bit familiar if you go back to the Pennsylvania Railroad car coach that I mentioned earlier in Seaside. It's a house. Nobody would ever know there's a railroad car inside. If you look at this picture, I'm trying to get my mouse to work. There you go. Back in here where it's indented, like this closed, this covered area, this wall here where you can just barely see a window, that's actually the side of the trolley car with vinyl siding and plywood and everything else over it. What you have here is one of the additions that was added. This was an addition that was added as well. And they all kind of sat on footings with some cement kind of connecting the footings together. This panel right here, if you pull that off, you can go underneath the trolley car and see the bolsters and whatnot in the framework. Another shot courtesy of Google Earth. There are no secrets in this world. If you look at the roof line, kind of the center line of the trolley car is right about here. All this was added, this end area was added. So kind of the center line of the trolley is right about over here, running towards the back of the property line. Just another shot, again, center line about here. Further back behind the bush, this side of the car was covered again with plywood and vinyl siding and whatnot, but did get some weather. The rest of the car was protected pretty well, and I can show you more about that later. Another shot from the street, and again, you would never know there was a trolley car next to somebody's house. Now, supposedly, if I recall correctly, it was called the railroad car house or the railroad house. I'm not sure anybody really knew why. But I had heard that, I think, from one of the developers who had purchased the house. From above, this area right here, this was taken after the car was moved. This is where it sat on the property. You had a fence here, you had a fence here, which made it, pretty tight to getting some pretty big equipment in there to pick the thing up. Just a little timeline here. It was a Facebook posting around October 2018. Brandon Breza and Mark Manfredi were the folks that we worked with. They're great guys. Again, really got to thank them for their vision to, say, gee, the house was not what we expected, but let's not destroy the trolley car. They probably would have saved a lot of money if they just bulldozed the thing right away. It took, a few extra months to get this thing moved. The Liberty Historic Railway funded the demolition and preparation of the site. You had to disconnect pipes and water, all kinds of good stuff. And then paid for the move of the car to a location in Southampton, New Jersey, at a cost of around $20,000. The move occurred in December 2018, just about 2 months after everybody kind of recognized that there was something interesting here. I wanted to recognize a couple of people, do it up front here so we don't forget, but Ed Rizzo, very good friend, Chris Lynch, Jim Hurley, Eric Levin, some folks from Pine Creek. If you want something done, you got to call some folks who used to be members of Pine Creek and New Jersey Museum of Transportation. B&C Building Group, a couple of young guys. They have a demolition and construction company. I believe they did all their work for free, including dumpsters. Fantastic guys. If you need something done, highly recommend them. You can look them up on Facebook or Google. Highly recommend the guys. There were several people from Liberty and other organizations who came down and volunteered during the demolition. Diamond Crossing Enterprise, John Nolan, came down with a small backhoe, I guess you'd call it. That thing was a lifesaver. That was tremendous help. You have no idea how much of a mess you make when you tear down a house. Risoldi Towing, they're the ones that did the moving. I'll get more into them later, but if you want something moved, call a tow company, don't call a crane company. Fantastic guys to work with. Eric Strohmeyer, who did a lot of the research on the car, and then Allied Recycling, very, very helpful when it comes to places to keep things, contacts to get things moved. Again, don't be afraid of a junkyard. If you want to get something done, they're the guys to call, as it turns out. Something I learned quite accidentally with the caboose. Just getting into a little bit of history on the car and how it ended up on Smith Street. This just came in today from Bob. I guess the organization, somebody in the organization did a little research today and found this newspaper article from 1934, which apparently you could buy one of these cars for something from $20 to $70 from your friendly used trolley car salesman in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. So nice little piece of history there. And it does mention this company we're working for this company in New York, the purchasers of the rolling stock of the Trenton Transit Company, make dandy bungalows. So, and indeed it did. Now what was kind of neat was the fact that the family that owned the car and lived in the car lived right around the corner. Mrs. Evelyn Breeze here, I don't know if it's Breeze or Breeze, which you'll see in many of the photographs, standing there, even in the coldest weather, watching us work on the car. They had called the 288 home for quite a few years in the 50s. And we all went over there, myself and the developers and Bill McKelvey and her daughter. And we sat there. It was like a scene right out of the movie Titanic, where they're all sitting around the little old lady as she tells them the tale of the sinking of the Titanic. Very interesting lady. She had a lot of pictures, and she had a journal, I guess it was, that she showed a couple folks. But they lived there for a while. They were the second owners. They were the ones that removed the front end of the trolley and built the initial porch. They added another bedroom in 1957, and then they moved out in the 60s, and the house would be rented out for quite a few years. Apparently, the original owner was a guy named John Guthrie, who moved it to this site in 1933 for his son to live in. And by the sounds of it, he owned quite a few lots on that street at the time. So that's kind of, this was a lot of fun. This was one of the, when you get involved in projects like this is kind of what makes it worthwhile. It's very, very cool to sit there and get the stories of things like this firsthand. So these are kind of just some pictures of the discovery. As I understand it from the developers, they bought the house, and of course they had walls and all that kind of stuff. And they were going to flip it, started to tear down the sheetrock and such, and discovered that, you know, building codes were a faraway thought when this thing was turned into a bigger house. In fact, in talking to Mrs. Breeze, she literally said one of the construction people that helped build one of these porches was blind. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what she said. And kind of a neat element to it. Good construction. It was all full-size lumber as well, full-dimension lumber, which B&C salvaged a good part of that. So again, the pictures you're seeing here are after they took down the walls and exposed the trolley car. This picture here in particular, when you went into the car in good light, I have it circled here, you can see the number of the car coming through the paint. So it was, you know, clear right away, okay, we had a number, we're near Trenton, and with the power of Google, you know, you put the story together. And that was very cool. And again, you can kind of see the window openings were, you know, they didn't tear it apart when they turned it into a house. They didn't tear it apart when they were tearing the house down around it. In fact, under this floor back here would be the steel beams for this end of the operator's end of the car. And they would end right about where this wall is. Just another shot, giving you a good shot of the clear story roof. You can see the main body here. This is a floor above the original floor. You can see the door over here. This is one of the entrance doors that to that porch on the side of the car. Just another shot. There's one of the original windows here. This is the side entrance. A little piece of steel was cut out in here, which will have to be replaced at some point. But there was enough beef under it that we had no problem with lifting the car. That's one of the developers. You can see the hot water heater. This area behind him was the bathroom. Some portion of the original roof was cut out and some new framing and whatnot put in. That has to be replaced at some point. You can see a lot of the original clear story windows, a lot of the original paint, shades, some better than others. Here's some good ones here. That one's not so good over here on the right. Just another shot. You can see the 3-panel door over here. Some of the clear story windows, most of them are there. We did not want them to break. Prior to moving the car, we actually screwed them all shut. It's interesting that they hinge at one end. They don't flip out, they hinge at one end. We were concerned about going down the road and having the wind catch one and crank it open, so we took care of that. You can see the structure of the car. It's very interesting to look at how it's built, especially compared to the caboose, which is built with big timbers. And the trolley car is built with very tiny little wooden pieces that are all screwed together with straight head screws. More shots of the clear story, or clerestory, whatever you want to call it. This is the roof of the house up top, just sitting on the roof up here of the trolley car. So then we'll move into the demolition and preparing it for the move. It was a mess.
Hey, JR, may I interrupt you for a second, please? I'm
Sure.
sorry. I just wanted
No.
to let you know that Evelyn is actually at the presentation this evening.
Oh, is she?
Yes,
Oh, great.
I just wanted to let you know there was a comment, so I just wanted to make sure that you knew that she was here, and I just think that's so exciting.
That's great. I'm glad to hear from her. And I have lots of pictures of her. And again, such cold weather, I was kind of worried about her. But the interview was just fantastic. All I could think about was Titanic. So anyway, here's some of the demolition work. Some of it's already been done by this point. This is John and the loader that he brought down. That thing was a lifesaver. He was really good about how to use that thing too. This is Bill McKelvey, our erstwhile leader. And again, you can just see the mess that we were making. You really wondered, gosh, what am I doing? This is the porch area. Remember, the building came out here at this end, and the building came out more at this end. This was the area that you can kind of see. There's the little hatch that you could look underneath the car. So we're getting closer and closer to getting it apart. Another shot. You can see the exposed end down here. There's the door panels. And just another shot of the mess. You really wondered if you're ever going to get it done. There's Ed Rizzo there. And a couple of the guys up top side ripping off the roof. The car was strong enough to walk on its original roof. Nobody fell through. Again, you can see the mess that we were making. Between the vinyl siding, which in cold weather just does not cooperate, it was a lot of work. It really, really was. You can just see some of the steel framing over here for the end of the car. There's Ed again. I think that's me. We're probably asking ourselves, what the heck are we doing? You can see the original operator's platform here and the original floor that we uncovered, the door. Again, the roof was plenty strong for walking around on, which, you know, most of the time you wouldn't expect it to be. You can see how close we are to this fence. Again, this was the side of the car that was exposed, you know, without any real building around it. So, and we're getting closer. Again, here you can see the steel framing for the other end of the car. And again, standing up top side. This is where the number of the car would be that we had previously in the picture when the building was around it. It's one of the developers. I can never remember which one it is, but which guy he is of the two names. And there we are. We're pretty much all set. Believe it or not, it got cleaned up, which is just an absolute miracle. Again, B&C and the volunteers and John and all that. I mean, it's amazing we got to that point. It was a mess. So, but we still had a little bit more work to do. We had a move date, which came up rather quickly. And there was some last minute prep work that had to be done, like screwing all those clear story windows closed. This is Jim Hurley. I think he worked with Eric Levin on the windows. Of course, it was a miserable, kind of misty, rotten day out. Although we did find the bar down the street, which doesn't serve food of all things. I never heard of that. But I figured we would be done in 2 or 3 hours, and by golly, we were done in 2 or 3 hours, and the car was ready to go. Just some work on the inside. We put some structure underneath where the roof supports have been cut out for the bathroom. Again, you can get a good feel for the roof and the ceiling and whatnot. There's a broken window there, but a lot of the windows were in place. This is just some of the diagonals and things that we put in just to make sure that things wouldn't move around as it went down the road. Chris Lynch doing some work on the supporting the roof over the door. Chris is one of the guys working on the caboose with us now. And again, you can see some of the structure of the body of the car. The steel frame would be behind these wood pieces. And here you are, there's Mrs. Brees. And for the day of the move, which I think was like December 6th, if I recall correctly, right about that. It was about a 75-ton tow truck, or a rotator, as they call them. It's an amazing vehicle. It was very expensive. Seems to me they're like, you know, close to $1 million. But you can do anything you ever wanted to do with one of those things. Risaldi's just did a fantastic job. They really did. TV crew was there. We got to mute somebody there. The course, the car hadn't been moved since 1930, so there was a little bit of concern about what would happen when we lifted it. It was only sitting on wooden blocks. It was not sitting on anything too substantial. So we have a picture here of the crane operator. Fantastic guy. We lifted it up. I was standing there with him, and it's all remote control. You're nowhere near the crane when you're running this thing. It's all remote control. All the guys had headsets on. They brought out their own Wi-Fi system, which they put into the car, which is what connected them all together. So there's no yelling. There's no hand gestures for up or down, left or right, nothing like that. It's all just done, over the radio system that they were using. And I asked him, very carefully, go ahead and give it a lift. He lifted it maybe a half an inch. You could hardly see it move. It was up off the blocking, and me and Ed, gave it a tour, went all the way around it, checked that one spot where the steel plate had been removed. Everything looked good, and we figured, okay, let's do it. And this is actually the operator of the crane right here in the middle, and me. I think that's Ed. And it's a weekday. There wasn't a lot of us out there for this. And so that's your first lift. And this is the operator, and there's his the remote control. And I'll tell you, these guys were good. It was and they had a good time doing it too. So this is the blocking that it sat on here and here. And so they lifted it up. Again, there's Mrs. Brees down there with the cameraman. And you can see where we left a lot of the plywood and stuff on this side to protect the windows and such. That's actually the bathroom window. It's still on there. Someday we'll take it off. This side of the car took more weather abuse, so there's more wood pieces missing along here that will need to be replaced. You can see how small they are. It's all very much like a cabinet making job. That's Ed and I admiring our work. Again, you can see where a lot of the wood structure on this side needs some replacement. But otherwise, there's a steel frame underneath there, which keeps it nice and straight. So essentially what they did is they moved the car over next to the crane and brought it up to a reasonable height. And there it is hanging there. And it's one of those things, you kind of bring it over, you kind of just let it sit there for a while and just make sure that nothing's going to go bad on you. Again, you can see the original deck. The steel framing is here. This is the back side of the three-panel door, which has some plywood or something over it. Original roof sections here. There's Mrs. Brees again, and full camera crew. So they backed the truck under it. This is a Landau trailer. These wheels back here can actually move lengthwise under the trailer, and that's what they set the car down on. There's a shot of it as it's getting closer to being on the car. You get a good view of what the trailer is all about. There's a nice little crane they used. Again, I think it was a 75-tonner, I believe, and a lot of wheels. Great guy, and a very tight street too. I mean, these guys had to be able to get in and out of the street too. Pretty amazing. And here's the car all loaded on the trailer. What I wanted to mention, I don't know if I can go back here. The one problem we had was the truck, of course, got stuck. There's a driveway down here. He's kind of in a hole. And what they did, very clever guys, this wheel set is movable. So they hydraulically. So they rolled this wheel set forward, locked it in place, and then made it look like they were moving that wheel set back to the rear of the trailer. But essentially what it was doing is pushing the trailer and the truck out into the street. Very, very clever. I was really wondering how they were going to get out of that. But, pretty amazing operators. It was really a lot of fun to watch. So again, this is us out in the street, all loaded up, ready to go. And This was exchanging a check and a bill of sale, which we did out in the street. Once it was off the property, we made it official. You can see some of the original blocking that it sat on. We actually have it sitting on that today. Good shot of the door. There's that window, again, a little bit narrower than the other. It was a heck of a day. It was a lot of fun. And this is where the day we unloaded it. We unloaded it late that afternoon, cold, and just got very, very late, sitting on the blocking that we brought with us from the original property on Smith Street. You can see the steel work. We secured it for the night. And what we did was we brought in I'm going to go into the current status here now. We brought in a boat company that does shrink wrapping. And price wasn't bad. I think it was like $900 or something to shrink wrap the whole car. There is a door in the side. There are vents to let out moisture. We go into the car on a pretty regular basis. There's no damage. So that the car is in good shape. I know somebody's going to ask, what's this back here? That's a New York Central bay window caboose. And if you're familiar with Mount Holly, that's what sat at the McDonald's on Route 30, I think it is. So it's that caboose is keeping the Trolley Car company here for the moment. So we had thoughts of shipping it out to Iowa. We shipped another car instead, and which we're not sure that worked out all that well. So we took a little different direction with this car than we had hoped. But I'm going to get into that here in just a moment. The car is in very good shape as far as the body itself. So there's just another picture of the shrink wrapping. And just a couple interior shots here. Again, this door here is rather important. It's nice having at least one door so we know that we can reproduce. Again, just the original operator's platform, the steel framing. Again, we're missing the curved steel that goes around the front here. You can see the pivot for the door at that point. And you can see where the vertical wall would have been. There's timbers up front here that will have to be reproduced, but you got most of the framework underneath the front end of the car for the wood body. This is where the steps would have been. At some point, these steps have been cut off. What's neat about this photo is this is the original roof over the platform of the car. And so you get a good feel for how it was attached, how it was built. Some of the mechanism is coming through, part of the sidewall. So it gives us a lot to work with as far as rebuilding the rest of the ends of the car. We are working with the Seashore Trolley Museum up in Maine. Rather than going to Gomaco out in Iowa, we decided to work with the folks up in Maine. They restore cars like this all the time. They know how they're put together, and what they're assembling for us essentially is a drawing package and a kit that we can then use to rebuild the end of the car. Making windows and things for the rest of the car is fairly straightforward. Some of us have done that in the past, but getting the curve and this structure correct, and the roof, to me the roof is the hard part. That's where we're getting the help. So we had the help of the folks up north. At some point, once we get the car indoors, they will probably come down and finish the drawings and then provide the drawings and the kit for us. That's all costing us, I forgot what the total price is. It must be around $8,000 or so to have them do this work for us. This just gives you an idea on what the drawings will look like so that the pieces can be made or at least roughed out and then can be fitted down here. So this is my get off the stage slide. Sorry if I went too fast. We can always go back if you like, if there's something anybody wants to see more of. But what do we need to take this thing forward? We have funding. We have some people who are interested in doing the work. We have some contractors who are ready to work on it. Seashore is very supportive. We need a place to work on it. Liberty does not own a building. There aren't too many museums in New Jersey with a building big enough to put this in to be worked on. I mean, we could certainly rent a building, but then it's going to be, $1,000 a month to store it, which is not a real good use of funding. But what we need is a building for it, where it can be worked on. Now, that would be to complete the body and rebuild the body. Trucks are another story. That's where it gets expensive. And it depends on what kind of restoration you want to do. Do you want it to be stationary for like a stationary use in a museum, in a building? Do you want to be able to tow it? Do you want to be able to run it under the wire? My main focus is preservation of the body, and we will figure out what to do with it after that. But the main thing is to maintain the integrity and restore the body that is there. So again, we have initial goal was to save the car. We've done that. We are able to preserve the car where it is today. But we do need a structure to put it in where it can be worked on by contractors, where the work could be done in a year or two and get the body done. Long term, where will it go? We're open to ideas there. We were talking to the Historical Society of Princeton, in part because the line ran through their property or alongside it. They expressed a lot of interest in it. COVID kind of shut things down. But again, kind of open for ideas. So that kind of concludes the presentation. I don't think I have one after this, another slide. So, open to questions or discussion, whatever you want to do. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, JR. That is absolutely fascinating. We do have some questions that are coming in through the chat. I guess first and foremost, I wanted to, well, why don't we go ahead and do the questions first, because we were going to have Evelyn Brees say something as well.
That'd be great. Yes.
Well, there was a couple of comments. One thing was people were commenting how nice the hardwood flooring was around the in the house around the car. And then let me see here. One question was how long is the car? What is the depth of the building you need?
Well, real quick, the flooring and a lot of the full dimension lumber was saved, and B&C took that as kind of part of their their effort. So if anybody's interested in some of the used lumber, again, you can Google them or look them up or send me an email. I probably have a phone number here. They also have a beautiful shop. I went over there. Ed and I went over to look at some of the lumber. None of it was big enough for the caboose we were working on, but we saw their shop and whatnot. So, but yeah, we did not. That was, again, from the Seaside car. That was a lesson learned. And with Ed and I working on the caboose, old lumber, old full dimension lumber is hard to find. So when you see it, grab it. Even if you don't need it, don't let it go to the dump. We were very careful about that with this car. Oh, and as far as the length, I believe it's 43 feet, I think, is the full length of the car.
Okay.
So, something that was, at least 50 feet long, 20 feet wide would be nice. Say 15, 20 feet, and it had to be about a door about 12 feet high.
Okay. And then there's a question, what powered the trolley cars? Were they electric?
Yeah, this was an electric trolley. It ran off an overhead wire. And and all that was stripped out by the folks that, sold the cars off. There's no wire, there's no trolley pole. All the copper was taken out of the car. Controllers, everything, all gone.
And then someone asks, what are the skills of your contractors that will be working on the car?
We have two that we've talked to. One of them is one of the guys at B&C. Very impressive shop. You need somebody with it's not so much house building skills as much as it is cabinet making kind of skills. And then we have I can't think of the guy's name. I got him through Allied. We've talked quite a few times, and it's more up his alley. So we have at least two to get pricing from. Happy to have others. And also, my experience from Pine Creek, and then also even working on the caboose, you can learn a lot along the way. There's work that can be done by volunteers, not just contractors. So there is opportunity for volunteers as well. One reason to use a contractor is just to get it done, because they can work on it 5 days a week, and it would get done very quickly, rather than hanging around for 3 or 4 years. So that's the goal, is to get it done and get the thing on display someplace. We just need a building to put it in.
It's such a fascinating story. And people maybe think of some other questions. I was going to see, Jackie, you're online here, if Evelyn wanted to say anything. And this is Evelyn Brees, who used to live in the house there.
I just want to say that we lived in that house 10 years, had 3 children, moved within the neighborhood, and I am so happy that you are going ahead with the reconstruction, and I hope one day to get to see it when it's fully finished. And thank you.
Thank you. It's really great to hear from you. And if we can just get a place to put it inside, we'll have it done in a year or two. So just got to get it inside.
Fabulous. Good.
You're on mute, Anna.
I'm so excited to meet you, Mrs. Brees. Thank you so much. One of the other questions that came through is, how are you able to get in and out of the car with shrink wrap on?
If you've you learn this lesson quick when you own a boat, there's a zipper door on the side, and you can you unzip it, you walk right into the car. And
I had no idea.
That's the way they usually do it on bigger boats. You have a door. You can even some boats that are shrink wrapped, they put a wooden door in, so you can just walk right in. The zipper tends to be a problem, but probably this year, if it doesn't go indoors soon, we'll probably re-shrink wrap it this year.
Okay. And Mrs. Brees, I don't want you to go anywhere. I've got a question for you. Could you, oh, this is interesting. Did you know the car was made, I'm sorry, did you know the house was made of a trolley car when you lived in it?
Yes, I sure did. In fact, my husband's family moved the trolley car in there.
Okay, thank you. And then
1933.
1933. Amazing. Such an amazing story. It really is.
Yes, the family lived there for several years. And then my husband and I moved in when we got married.
Excellent. And then there's actually a question for you, JR, on where can money, I can't speak, where can money be donated for its restoration?
If you go to the Liberty Historic website, there is a donate button, and you can donate there, or you can even mail a check. The website has all the information. If you like, you can send me an email, jrmay@monmouth.com, and I can help make it happen.
Thank you for asking that question. And then there's another question, Mrs. Brees. I believe this is for you. What was different about living in a house with a trolley car versus living in a traditional house?
Oh,
Were there any?
believe me, it's a tight squeeze when you have a family in a trolley car, especially in the winter when the 3 children are in the house with you.
I can't even imagine. And I'm going to wait and see if there's any more questions that come through here.
Anna?
Yes.
Anna, Fred Kane, 2 questions. Number 1, what were the actual dimensions of the rail car?
I don't have the exact dimensions off the top of my head, but it's a 32-foot body. And then each end of the car is, I've forgotten, 6 or so feet.
And how wide?
Oh, about 9 feet wide.
Very tight house.
Yes. That's why they put a couple of additions on it.
My last question, have anybody done any investigation about a storage place in the greater Trenton area? There are a number of factories and warehouses that are up there. I'm just wondering.
I guess no, because I really don't have any idea who to make contact with. You know, we would need somebody who wouldn't want an arm and a leg for rent. You know, a little bit of rent is certainly doable, but we were looking at building a structure for it on a piece of property where we would pay for the building, but we could use it rent-free for some number of years, you know, like 4 or 5 years at least. So, I mean, that's another option too. It's, but yeah, we were ready to, you know, put up a building for it if we had a piece of property where, you know, it would, you know, we wouldn't have to pay rent. And then when we're done with the building, the owner of the property gets the building.
Okay. Wonderful program. And Anna, very nicely run.
Thank you for your question, Fred. There are a couple more, JR, that are coming through the chat. Do you want to take a few more?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
All right, let me see
Yes.
here. Someone had shared that Dennis Waters, who is a local historian, that he's given talks about Trenton, the Trenton trolley system.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about how this is an important window into the trolley story in Mercer County, which it is. It has a unique fit, that is definitely for sure.
Yeah, that we'd like to keep it local. I mean, it's one reason Princeton was, I think, interested in it. If there's another, you know, location, you know, again, you know, Liberty is able to, you know, kind of help things along financially to help develop such a site. So, you know, we're open to ideas. You know, again, my goal was to save it and preserve it, and you know, secondarily get it restored and get it into a museum someplace. And we're into a museum setting.
Right.
One of the thoughts that I think Princeton had was to, you know, they have their main facility and whatnot, but was to have a secondary thing for people to see other than a couple of buildings, where maybe you could do story time with kids, you know, things like that. They had some good ideas for it, real vision. Again, COVID kind of, you know, shut things down. So you know, there's lots of ideas, you know, but keeping it local is certainly key. Getting it indoors is key.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get some momentum, even this presentation, for some outreach. One of the questions here for Mrs. Brees is, what year did you move into the house?
What year did I?
What year did you move into the house?
Into the trolley car?
Yes.
Yes.
1952.
1962?
50.
52.
Five.
Okay.
52.
Thank you. I'm getting lots of thank yous, JR, for your presentation. There's a question here. Trenton Transit was at the trolley line that ran through the lake bed in Mercer County Park.
I wouldn't be able to answer that question.
Okay. And then one person asks, can you share suggestions for your fundraising efforts?
Suggestions?
They say suggestions. I think you might have answered this actually already about where donations and whatnot can go.
I mean, yeah, on the website, we did do a GoFundMe campaign in the beginning, which paid for the drawings. It's really paying for Seashore to do their work. So there on the Facebook page, there was a GoFundMe, which I kind of push for because it's easy. You can do it with credit cards and things, as opposed to mailing a check, which a lot of people just don't do anymore. So again, if someone's interested in making a donation or has an interest in the building, they can contact me. I think I can make these slides available if you want to send. I can save it as a PDF, and it can be emailed, and it has my contact information in it. If someone wants to get together and meet, I live here in New Jersey. I'm not that far away. Be happy to meet with somebody. So whatever it takes, I'll do to make sure the money is there and the facility and the opportunity is put together.
And then someone asked if this is going to be, the program's going to be, it's being recorded and it will be available it's going to be housed on the library's website, Mercer County Library Systems, our YouTube site, but it'll be accessible from the Hopewell Valley Historical page as well. And then someone recommended or asked about what about utilizing an old unused airport hangar, maybe, at the little airport outside Lawrenceville.
Well, we have some contact information. Of course, what always helps, nothing worse than a cold call. You really need somebody who knows somebody. So if somebody knows somebody at the airport, that would be great, to at least do an introduction. But, my experience is a cold call is not as, the chances of success are less with a cold call than they are if you had an introductory email or a phone call or, hey, Bob so-and-so said I should call you.
Right.
Something like that. I had thought even about Monmouth County Airport over here, but it's a little bit further away, because anytime you move the car, it's going to cost probably $8,000, so you don't want to move it a lot and you don't want to move it far. The idea is to put some wheels under it now and be able to roll it onto a trailer and not use the crane.
Mm-hmm.
The crane is where the money is. But again, anytime you move something like this, it's a full day. Weather is never good. For whatever reason, I've never done these things in good weather, and it's expensive. So if anybody has any thoughts or can do an introduction, fire away. Let me know, and we'll make it happen. But an aircraft hangar would be ideal.
Yeah, I think he might have been talking about, we're having a little history lesson in the chat here, and but he might have been referring to the Twin Pines hangar, which was actually destroyed about 10 years ago. But yeah, an airport hangar would be fabulous for it. True.
Well, if there's property available and agreements can be put together, we'll build a building. If there's if someone wants to kind of build a museum around it, we could probably help with that. Do it in phases, something big enough for the trolley, and then it can be added on to for other purposes. So, but again, the main thing is to somehow or another get it indoors.
Right.
Even a soft-sided building. Again, then you get into variances and zoning and all that kind of happy stuff. When it comes to trying to put up a building. but we're open to ideas.
Well, JR, I want to thank you so much for presenting this evening and getting the word out. And I do hope that the people who were here this evening can spread the word. I want to thank the Hopewell Valley Historical Society and the Hopewell Museum for helping us bring this program to our community. It looks like there's no more questions. There's lots of thank yous and fascinating story comments. So again, thank you for sharing such a wonderful story with everybody. And thank you, Mrs. Brees, so much for attending this evening. It was an added bonus, the cherry on top.
Yeah, that was great.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I have one question for Mrs. Brees.
Yes.
When we interviewed you, you mentioned the carpenter who was blind. Did I hear that wrong?
No, that's correct.
That's correct. The carpenter was blind. He did beautiful work, but that was a tough building to tear apart. That really was. So again, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you on this. I really do. Good
Thank
seeing you.
Thank you. And
Thank you so much,
enjoyed
everybody.
meeting you, JR.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody, and hope to hear from somebody with ideas on a building or an idea on where we want to go with it.
Thank you again, everybody, and have a lovely evening. And of course, stay safe out there.
Thank you. Bye-bye.